The Atlanta Braves had a nightmare weekend against the Mariners. Spencer Strider was pushed back. They were blown out twice. Ronald still slumping, and the young arms were not ready. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Monday, September 8th. This is your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. We're proudly part of the Believe Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on X, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, BravesToday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. We have a ton of stuff to get to from the weekend. The young prospect relievers we were talking about, Hayden Harris, Rolddy Muñoz, seemed to struggle a little bit over the weekend. So did Dylan Dodd, by the way. Joey Wentz. Ronald Acuña Jr. dropped to the lowest place in the order he's been since like 2018 and still not able to hit. But the biggest thing that stood out to me, and the Ronald story is huge. Like, we're going to talk plenty about that. But Sunday's start was supposed to be a Spencer Strider start. And we found out on Sunday morning that the Braves were swapping from Spencer Strider to Joey Wentz from the start. And Jake and I talked about this on the postcast after the game. We didn't know how much time Joey Wentz had to prepare. He was not good at all in that game. Joey Wentz really struggled yesterday. He did not make it out of the third inning. He gave up 8 runs on 8 hits, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts, gave up 2 home runs. Just a really kind of frustrating day for him. He got tagged by Jorge Polanco and Josh Naylor in that third inning. Part of 10 home runs the Mariners hit from the 7th inning of Saturday through the end of Sunday's game. They hit 10 home runs in the span of like 12 innings. But like Jake and I speculated a little bit that maybe Wentz was a little shaky because he didn't know he was going to be starting until that morning. It turns out we got some reporting, both Mark Bonin of MLB.com and David O'Brien of The Athletic, the only 2 full-time BBWA beat reporters we have left covering this team. Shout out AJC for just not filling Justin's role until I guess next season. The Braves made this switch on Thursday. They decided Thursday night they were going to change the rotation. And the way that this works, the final day, like the final game of the series, that day, so like yesterday, Sunday was the final day of the Mariners series. In the game notes that the team sends to us, I mean the people on the media mailing list, in the game notes, the team lists the starters for the upcoming series. So Wednesday afternoon. Wednesday afternoon, before they played the finale against the Cubs, the team told us what the rotation was going to be for the Mariners series. And in the past, if they've made a change to the rotation, the media team typically lets us know. They'll send us a message like, hey, the team's changed the rotation, or they'll mention it in one of the press conferences or something like that. Like one of the media availabilities, they'll mention they're changing the rotation. They didn't do that this time. And there's a couple reasons they changed it. So the first reason they changed it was so that Spencer Strider could get some more rest, not be pitching it, not have 4 days of rest on regular rest, but give him a little extra. We've talked before about the workload concerns here, right? He essentially did not have a season last year. He made 2 starts. You look at spring a little bit, but like it was a lot lower of a workload. And right now he's already at 101 innings this year. So they're buying him a little extra rest, but they're also giving him the ability to add an extra between starts bullpen. Back in the day, like the Smoltz, Glavine, Maddox time, guys used to throw 2 bullpens between starts on regular rest. And now it's really become a 1 bullpen kind of thing, right? You have your post-start day. You usually, that second day, maybe the third day, depending on how you recover, you're throwing your bullpen. And then you have like an off day or 2 off days before your next start. And when I say off day, you're still doing cardio, you're still doing like tossing and stuff, but you're not pitching. Well, Strider's doing this extra. He'll have 3 days of rest, 3 extra days of rest. So he's doing this, a second bullpen in here, because his goal is to try and figure out some things with movements and all of that kind of stuff. We've seen him be able to make some changes between starts as far as the movement profile on the fastball, getting some of that induced vertical break back, or different pitch. Like, we've seen him be able to take a bullpen session. One time he went to Maven Baseball Lab. Again, Braves should just buy them or whatever. But this is why he was pushed back. And again, we just weren't told. But he was pushed back, and he will make a start on Tuesday versus Cade Horton in the series. One of the other advantages to pushing him back not to Monday but to Tuesday, it lets him get that bullpen in, but also it keeps Bryce Elder on regular rest. And there's a couple reasons why the team is trying to do this, okay? The first reason they're keeping Bryce Elder on regular rest is that's what he prefers. He wants to pitch on regular rest. And to kind of, I guess, clarify on this real quick, regular rest for a pitcher is 4 days. You make a start, there's 4 days, and then you make another start. That's regular rest. Going 5, going 6, whatever, is different. If you go back to the beginning of July, Elder's made 11 starts since the beginning of July. And you could reasonably argue 3 of them were somewhere between bad and awful. Right? He had 8 runs and 2 2/3 against Texas on the road. He had 5 runs in 6 innings against Miami at home. And he had 8 runs and 4 2/3 against the White Sox at home. Of those 3 bad outings, 2 of those were on extra rest. And I've heard Joe Simpson on the radio call talk about this a little bit. His belief, and this is probably an off-season project for me. I've not actually checked this, but his belief as a former player is that sinker ball pitchers like Bryce Elder do better without additional rest. When they're a little bit fatigued, or not fatigued, but they're on regular rest, they've not fully recovered from the previous outing, because that keeps the pitches down. That keeps them from coming up, drifting up in the zone too much. Again, I've not checked that, but anecdotally, if you look back at Bryce Elder since July, his worst starts, 2 of his 3 bad starts, have been on extra rest. And then a start that wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great, against the Angels to start July, that was 4 runs in 5 innings. That was also on extra rest. And all of his best starts in this stretch, for the most part, have been on regular rest, right? He had 2 runs and 6 2/3 on the road against Cincinnati. That was on 4 days of rest on August 1st. He had 2 earned runs in 7 innings on the road against the Mets. That was 1 additional day. And then he faced the Mets at home and had 2 runs in 6 innings with 6 strikeouts. That was on regular rest. He had 1 run on 3 hits in 7 innings against Philly on the road. That was on regular rest. And then his Cubs start, no earned runs, 1 unearned run, and 4 hits across 7 innings. That was on regular rest. So pushing Strider back, not from Sunday to Monday, but from Sunday to Tuesday, let them, 1, gives him the chance to work on some stuff, also manages his workload, but then also gives Bryce Elder a chance to stay on schedule by being on Monday versus pushing Strider to Monday and Elder to Tuesday. I've also heard from a couple people in and around the team that some of the players, some of the pitchers are on board with this idea. They are on board with this. Herson Waldrop is a guy that having this extra off day every Thursday and being for the rest of the season and being able to push guys around a little bit, getting him some additional rest, getting Strider some additional rest. Like I've heard there's some people who like this idea, giving them an extra day, whereas Bryce Elder, they'll move him around because he doesn't want additional rest. And there's usually always a guy that's like that. Max Fried. Last year, Max Fried doesn't like additional rest. He wants to be on regular rest. He's a routine-oriented guy. These are the things I do every day leading up to my start. That's fine. Every rotation has one. And so it's not going to be a kind of a set thing where you will see the same guy pitch every fifth day going forward because they're going to try and build in extra rest for some of these guys. Strider's going to get extra. Waldrop's going to end up getting extra. But Elder, more than likely, is not going to get extra because he likes regular rest. And it's hard to argue down the stretch here that he hasn't been a better starter when he's been on regular rest versus pitching on extra. In just a minute, let's talk about the weekend that was. We saw the pitching struggle. I want to talk about Ronald's placement in the lineup. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Really proud to have them as the presenting sponsor of Braves Today. You can go in here. Obviously, football season's the best time to be involved in FanDuel because they have tons of options. Same game parlays. You can make a slate for your Sunday football action or your Saturday football action. But they have a lot of stuff out here for baseball as well. Tonight, Bryce Elder versus Shota Imanaga. Cubs in town for a rematch from last week. The spread is 1.5 runs in favor of Chicago. There's an over-under, right? It's 9 runs. That's what they think the total is going to be, over-under 9 runs. They also have a lot of same-game parlay options in here. You can go in there. The player most likely to hit a home run from the odds, according to FanDuel, is Ronald Acuña Jr. at plus 330. They have 4 different Braves in there to hit a home run before you get to the first Cubs player. Ronald Acuña Jr. plus 330, Matt Olson plus 390, Sean Murphy plus 420, and then Marcell Ozuna plus 430 before you get to, say, a Suzuki or Michael Busch or Pete Crow Armstrong, or even the hot Braves like Jurickson Profar and Ozzie Albies. It's a little bit surprising, but you can go in here. There are tons of different things. If you have an idea about who's going to strike out, like the strikeout totals for these guys, guess what? Shota Imanaga, the line's 4.5. Bryce Elder, the line's 3.5. When he's on regular rest, he usually gets more than 3 or 4 strikeouts. You can do first inning runs. You can do total bases. You can do who will get 2 or more hits or 3 or more hits. So go check out FanDuel, sportsbook.fanduel.com, and thank you to FanDuel for sponsoring Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby. Let's talk a little bit about Ronald Acuña Jr. I mentioned that he is the favorite to hit a home run tonight, according to the FanDuel odds. And I understand these are not exactly how that works, right? Some of the odds are set to get action as well. They're not exactly a predictor, but I will say they're pretty good at predicting stuff. And over the weekend, Ronald he had Friday off. And we heard from Snit on Friday afternoon before Game 1 that he originally wanted to give Ronald Wednesday off so that he would be off on Wednesday and have the off day on Thursday to get a 2-day reset. But Jurickson Profar was still on paternity. Jake Fraley had a sore foot, and they did not think he was available on Wednesday. So Ronald played Wednesday and got Friday off. when he got back in the lineup on Saturday, he was batting 6th on Saturday. He was batting 7th on Sunday. And this is in response to the current slump that he is in. He is not and here's the thing. This has not been a very long slump. And I think that's what's frustrating a lot of people with the way that this is kind of being managed. So he comes back from the calf injury on August 15th. I talked about this a little bit last week. He comes back on August 15th. He's hitting 286 from August 15th through August 26th. Span of 11 games, he hits 286 with a 375 on base and a 381 slug. So the power's not there. He does get a home run and a double, but 10 singles in this stretch. He also walks 6 times. He steals 2 bags. Like, the calf is obviously feeling at least okay enough to steal some bases. But from that point through yesterday, he has just been pretty bad, right? He has a grand total of 1 hit in that entire stretch, with the 1 hit coming game 2 against Philly. He had a double against Philly. He drew a walk there. And outside of that, he has not gotten a hit since then. So he's in the longest hitless streak of his career, 0 for 25, longest of his career, longest active streak in the majors. His previous longest was only 18. And I think what's frustrating about Ronald being dropped, and Jake Mastriani, Locked On Braves, my postcast co-host there, I think logistically the way it works, officially I host the postcast and I'm going to call him the co-host, I guess. He had a segment this morning on Locked On Braves asking if Ronald's being punished. And I don't quite think I want to go that far, but I guess bring out an old chestnut here. 2 things can be true at once. We've been asking Brian Snitker to change his lineup based on who is hot and who is not. This has been an incredibly streaky offense. Individual players have been streaky all year. And it felt like it took forever for some of the guys who weren't hitting that well to move down in the order. And I'm thinking about like Marcell Ozuna, for instance. Not only was he still in the lineup for an incredibly long time this year, but he was batting 4th. He was batting 5th. Like, he was high in the order, despite being, what's cooler than being cool? Ice cold, right? Shout out Outcast. And he just stayed up there, right? Like, Marcell Ozuna did not hit lower than 5th in this lineup until July. The first time he appeared in the 7 spot was July 5th. The first time he appeared in the 7th hole was July 26th. The first time he appeared in the 8 hole was yesterday. Sunday is the first time he hit 8th in the lineup. But Ronald, after 10 games of being cold, gets bumped to 6th and then to 7th like virtually immediately. And so it's really weird timing, right? Because if he's been bad, if he's been cold, you moved him a lot faster than you moved everybody else. Is that a sign of growth from Brian Snitker? Or is there some other consideration here? That's what I want to know. And I do think that there is something to be discussed. And somebody told me recently that I give too much time to the negative Nancys on Twitter, right? The people who are hating just to hate, who have something bad to say, who have something poor to say, whatever. But I've seen this come up on social media a lot this season. And I've seen a couple other Braves media members try to address this. I think people, and this is people in general, listeners and watchers of this show, y'all are great. Y'all are ball knowers. Y'all don't do this. But there's a lot of people out there that see these players struggling or not being good. And Ronald's not good right now. He's not good defensively. He's not good offensively right now. He's struggling. And they equate their struggles to produce with them not caring. And I think that's a mistake. The thing that we have to know, one about baseball players in general, and then about Ronald specifically, is that Major League Baseball is an incredibly hard game. Look at hitters. We celebrate a guy who can get a hit 30% of the time. We call him one of the best hitters in the league. Baseball is an incredibly hard game when you're doing well. When you're doing well, you're still failing more than 7 times out of 10. You might hit 280. You're hitting well. You're having a good offensive season. You're hitting 280. You're failing 72% of the time. And I think people think that when these guys are not doing well, it's because they don't care. They wouldn't have gotten to Major League Baseball, and they wouldn't still be in Major League Baseball if they didn't care. Baseball in 2020, it's not like 1973, right? Where you can show up to the ballpark hungover and you can go out there and pick up 2 or 3 hits. I was reading an article in The Athletic over the weekend about, I think it was The Athletic, maybe it was somewhere else. And I feel bad for whoever that was that wrote. I can't think of who it was right this second. If it wasn't The Athletic, I apologize. About how the off-the-field lifestyle of baseball players now is so much different than the 80s and the 90s, right? There's not a whole lot of alcohol drinking, not only just after the games, period. There's very little alcohol drinking, things like that. They're not going out and partying. And some of it was the prevalence of social media. Like, everybody's got a phone in their pocket and they can put photos online of you doing stuff. But some of it also is just how incredibly hard the game is nowadays. And how they have to be at their absolute best to have a chance to produce. It's not necessarily a fun lifestyle. If they didn't care, they wouldn't be there. And I've seen some former players talk about, like Trevor May, the former pitcher for the Mets and the A's and everything, content creator now. I've seen him specifically recently talk about this, about how everybody in that room cares more than you can possibly imagine, because it's too hard of a thing to do if you don't. Now, I will agree with Ronald specifically. It's clear that he's frustrated. And he's a guy that outwardly shows his emotion, positive and negative, a little bit more than a lot of other guys. And so you might have the impression that he doesn't care or that he's mentally checked out because he's frustrated, because you can see it on his face, the body language, all that kind of stuff. But he cares. He cares more than you realize. I've seen this same thing about Austin Riley. Austin Riley didn't care because he was slumping or he was making mistakes on defense. If they didn't care, they wouldn't be there. Major League Baseball is too hard of a sport to just halfway be engaged. You've got to fully be engaged, or you can't make it at the major league level. You're not going to stay there. And the teams know that. The teams are aware. And when you see the guys who are halfway there, they're not fully engaged, even established major leaguers, you see them get suspended, get sent down, whatever. C.J. Abrams last year, do you remember at the very end of the season? The Nationals were in Chicago playing the Cubs. And he went to a casino after the game, and he was there till like 4 or 5 in the morning. He wasn't fully engaged in the game. He was distracted. What'd they do? They sent him to the minors. The end of the year, a guy who had been in the majors for like 3 seasons at that point, they sent him to the minors because he wasn't fully engaged in the game. These guys are fully engaged in the game. I don't know why Brian Snitker finally moved Ronald down so aggressively when he hasn't done it with other guys in the past. Maybe he's learned. Maybe this is something different and he's trying to send Ronald a message. Maybe there's something in the clubhouse we don't know about. I don't know. That's all speculation. But just because he's not hitting right now, just because his body language is bad, doesn't mean Ronald doesn't care. That's a dude that asks permission to go play winter ball almost every single year when he doesn't have to. And he asked to do it because he loves playing baseball and he wants nothing more than to be playing baseball. You can criticize the effort, right? It looks like in the outfield on some of the short fly balls he's pulling up. You can criticize the effort, right? You can criticize the performance, right? At the plate, the longest hitless streak of his career, the longest active hitless streak in the majors. You can't criticize if the dude cares or not, because he does. If he didn't care, he wouldn't be there. In just a second, let's talk about some of the youngsters from over the weekend who do care, but weren't able to make it happen. Hayden Harris, Rolddy Muñoz. We'll talk about some of those guys, as well as a possible roster move you might see today. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today. I'm going to try to get off the soapbox real quick on this. The Atlanta Braves got blown out twice over the weekend. I mentioned from the 7th inning of Game 2 through the end of Game 3, they gave up 10 home runs. And some of the victims here, Rolddy Muñoz, Hayden Harris. We saw Hurston Waldrop struggle on Saturday, but fight through it. This was a really interesting growth moment. Do you remember we talked about Hurston Waldrop a couple weeks ago? And one of the things I said is the game plan against him is either jump on him early, don't let him get you to 2 strikes, or know that when you get to 2 strikes, you are going to get splitters. He is going to throw you splitters, and you have to do a good job of either not letting him get to that point or handling that splitter when you get it. Seattle did this. On Saturday, in the 1st inning, you could see when he got to 2 strikes, he was just spamming splitters, and it wasn't working. Cal Raleigh draws a walk. He got to 2 strikes, he drew a walk. Julio Rodriguez got to 2 strikes, started laying off the splitters, and then when one of them stayed up in the zone, he crushed it for a 2-run homer. Credit to Hurston Waldrop, credit to Sean Murphy. He's been really bad behind at the plate, but he's been really good behind the plate. They got together for a mound visit, and Hurston Waldrop started going to the sinker in those 2-strike counts, because it became a very easy, if you see a pitch at the knees, just don't swing. Just take it. Because odds are it's a splitter dropping out of the zone. He's trying to get you to chase. So they started going to the sinker on 2-strike counts. Really good adjustment. He gets through the rest of the outing. Yes, he allowed like 5 walks, but he did not give up a run after that 1st inning, and he made it through 5. And for a guy to be off of his game on command a little bit and have his best pitch, in essence, completely taken away by the opponent, that's a really good outing. But the guys behind him weren't really able to have that much success. We saw Rolddy Muñoz struggle. He faced 3 hitters. He walked 2 of them. He threw 14 pitches. Only 3 of them were in the zone. Now, he got more strikes than that because the guy's chasing stuff. But of the 14 pitches he threw on Saturday, 3 were in the strike zone. The walk issue's definitely becoming a problem there. Deizabal Hernandez, who I'm saying he is young from the perspective of his experience, right? He's 28 years old, but he's pitched a grand total of 58 2/3 innings in the majors. So he is young from an experience standpoint. They got to him. He allowed 3 runs in 2/3 of an inning, including 2 home runs. And a really interesting stat there is from when he came up in 2023 through like a month ago, he just was allowing like no homers. Like literally 55 appearances from July 29th, 2023 through August 15th, 2025, 0 home runs. His last 2 appearances, he allowed 3 home runs. Some of this stuff just regresses to the mean eventually, right? Some of this stuff just, you get lucky on homers, and eventually in a while, it comes back. Hayden Harris gave up 2 hits and a walk before he got out of the inning. And then you see on Sunday, Atlanta did go back to some of those same guys, and they still struggled a little bit with this. Dylan Dodd covered 3 1/3 innings after Wentz left early. 5 hits, 3 earned runs. Gave up a home run. Hayden Harris came in 1 1/3. He got 4 outs. He did give up a hit. He did walk a guy as well. Did not strike anybody out. He has 1 strikeout in the majors. He's just not been able to translate the strikeout performance in the minors to the majors, right? It's a low velo but low VAA fastball that really ends up being deceptive up in the zone. He's not been able to accurately translate that into strikeouts in the majors. Rolddy Muñoz comes in again. 1 1/3 innings, 4 hits, 5 runs, 1 walk to 3 strikeouts. I'm recording this about 9:30 in the morning on Monday. The Braves have not put out any sort of roster move as of yet, but I am honestly expecting 1 or possibly even 2 moves today. Muñoz is probably going down to the minors, if for no other reason than to report Alexis Diaz to Atlanta. I don't know if they're going to say, hey, Dodd, you just pitched 3 1/3. We're going to send you down, replace you with Dane Dunning or something. Hayden Harris, they'll probably keep him up, but I legitimately think maybe they decide to send him back down as well. Vidal Brujan came in and pitched the final 2/3 of an inning, gave up 1 home run as well, right? Atlanta gave up 5 in this game, 4 from regular pitchers and 1 from Brujan. But it's really clear to me that, okay, these young relievers just are not quite ready yet. This is something, you have the runway here to do this, right? Because, if you were competing, if you were counting down a magic number to clinching the division or making the postseason or whatever, I would be incredibly mad you brought in Rolddy Muñoz into a 1-run game on Saturday, right? A command challenged flamethrower. What are you doing here? But the win-loss total this season ultimately does not matter. And so letting these guys pitch in the majors, getting the information, my hope here is that Atlanta is seeing, and by Atlanta, I mean the front office is seeing what Joey Wentz has done recently, how he has struggled. They're seeing how Rolddy Muñoz is struggling, how Hayden Harris is struggling, how Dylan Dodd is, I think he's been promising, but he had a bad day on Sunday. And this helps them understand that this, I can stop hitting the desk, sorry about that. This helps them understand that this offseason, you have to go invest in the bullpen again. You have to go actually find guys. You have to go for quality over quantity. This is the way they should be handling this. They should be giving guys a chance to see if they can stick in the majors. And now that you are seeing that, hey, they're not ready to do that, Deisabel Hernandez is not ready to be a high leverage guy. Rolddy Muñoz doesn't look like he's ready to be a major leaguer. Hayden Harris, I think right now you're still looking at him as maybe at best a low leverage guy until you can figure out how to get the whiffs to translate. My hope is that they're seeing this and this helps them understand, hey, we have got to go invest in this bullpen this winter. They claimed Alexis Diaz off of waivers, former all-star closer in 2023 with the Reds. He's not been good since the all-star break in 2023, similar to kind of some of the issues Bryce Elder was having. He ended up being traded from the Reds to the Dodgers mid-season, actually pretty early in the year. The Dodgers just DFA'd him. Despite all of their bullpen injuries, they DFA'd him, and Atlanta claimed him off waivers. If they can fix him, great. You've got 2 seasons of a former all-star closer. It should cost you 2 arbitration years. He has a full plethora of options, by the way. You can option him down in both those seasons. it should cost them at most probably $10 million in arbitration, if it works. You get a couple weeks now to see what he can do here. His salary this year was $4.5 million from his first year in arbitration. If Atlanta keeps him on the major league roster, reports him today, and pays him for today, and keeps him the entire season, I think they're paying about $505,000. I broke down the math over on the newsletter. That's the kind of move you need to be making right now. Because, again, the win-loss does not matter, right? Can you fix Alexis Diaz in a couple weeks? If you can, great. Tender him a contract for next year. Hopefully he avoids arbitration with you. Tender him a contract next year. And you may have a high leverage reliever that you got for nothing but this year's salary. You didn't give up a prospect because you claimed him off waivers. Same thing with Ha-Seong Kim. You didn't give up a prospect because you claimed him off waivers. We got a report the Braves tried to trade for Ha-Seong Kim at the trade deadline. And Tampa Bay said no. And then later, the Braves claimed him off waivers and gave up nothing for him. Whether you, some people have negative thoughts on Alex Anthopoulos, and I don't agree with those. But these are potentially very high impact moves for virtually nothing. And these are exactly what the Braves need to be doing from now to the end of the season. I'm down to grab any other guys that get waived. Give them 2 weeks of run, and then time in the offseason with you guys to see if it works out. Guess what? If Alexis Diaz doesn't work out, they just non-tender him at the non-tender deadline. They just don't offer him a contract. He goes to free agency. Done. That's it. Ha-Seong Kim, it's a player option, right? Again, I think there's a possibility he opts that he goes to free agency. Everybody's saying it's a lock. He comes back. I don't think it is. But these moves cost Atlanta nothing but the salary. No prospects. They were waiver claims. No prospects. And these are the kind of evaluations you need to be doing down the stretch. Promoting the young kids. Grabbing former quality players off of waivers and seeing if they can find their old magic. I love it. This has been Braves Today for Monday, September 8th. Do me a favor. If you're listening on audio, 5-star review would be awesome. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell. So that way you know when we drop the next episode. I'm going to try to get more of those mini episodes in, those little player breakdowns. We'll see if I can get some of those in this week. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.